forward to it.
Yeah, this is gonna be a good one. The coffee is really kicking in. I'm feeling ready to go.
Nothing to do with the guest or the topic. Just
It
the
absolutely
coffee.
is. The
It's
coffee's just an
It's
extra.
the top strand of coffee that's making this one. God.
Hello and welcome to Beyond the Sport, the podcast that goes beneath the surface with sporting heroes, their highs, their lows and their inspirations from their sporting journey. I'm Jim Daly.
And I'm Kenzie Benali, and we'll be speaking to Olympians and Paralympians, Premier League winners, England netball roses, rugby stars and more, all to find out about their achievements and their successes.
Joining us on today's episode is an expert and England international from one of the fastest growing sports in the country in touch rugby.
Yes, and after being part of the England touch rugby setup for 10 years, he played for his country again at the Touch Rugby World Cup last year in sunny Nottingham. We are so excited to welcome to Beyond the Sport, Gregg Cropper. So good to have you with us. How are you doing?
Thanks very much. Yeah, really excited to be here.
How are you today? You okay?
Yeah, good. Very well. Thank you very much.
Coffee's good?
Yeah, strong.
It is strong coffee.
It is strong coffee, yeah. But I think that's a good way to start the day.
I think it is.
And a good way
It's
to
the
start
only
the
way to do
podcast.
it.
Brought to
Absolutely.
you by coffee.
Yes, fueled by coffee.
Greg, you are Mr Touch Rugby. How do you feel about that?
I mean, it's an accolade, one that I didn't give to myself. I think, yeah, in terms of that, I think I was kind of growing up around the sport in the last probably 10 years. But I think internationally, there's a lot more people that have kind of been around the sport for a lot longer. I think I was just more prevalent in England for a length of time due to kind of achievements and the role I had in that space.
You came to sort of touch rugby quite sort of, I'd say later in your life. You weren't even 30, but in sports world, that's weirdly quite
Yes,
late.
yeah,
What
yeah.
was it about touch rugby that appealed to you?
So, as a kid growing up, I loved playing rugby league. And I was quite a chunky kid back in my youth. And then when I'm only 5'5", so like when we kids kind of get to that maturation age, the differential between children and certainly and boys playing contact sports kind of gets a lot bigger. So from being able to just run forward through people, I had to kind of evolve my game quite a lot. From playing prop into kind of scrum half and kind of change my game quite a lot. And then didn't really play sport for about 10 years. And then a friend of mine just said, "You fancy having a game of touch rugby?" And I was like, "Oh, what's that?" Didn't really kind of know anything about it, but he said it's a bit like rugby league. You run forwards, you pass backwards, and it's just a load of fun. So I was like, "Oh, sounds like," and I don't get beaten up doing it. So I was like,
Win-win.
Sounds quite good.
Put me down. So yeah, I kind of started playing there really, just as a social game, and then went a couple of times a week, started to get more involved in it, and then kind of got a little bit obsessed with it really. I kind of booked my holidays around making sure that I could be at certain places to play certain things, and then I guess because it was such an inclusive game, there was a local league that I started to play in, and there was families playing, and there was like mothers and daughters, fathers, sons, and like it was a whole like really kind of mixed ability, mixed age, and everyone kind of just having fun in summer. So I met a few people there that were a bit more experienced in the game. They took me under the wing a little bit, and started to just learn it from there. And I guess it grew from there really, my passion into kind of playing a lot longer. It became like the social side as well. So like my social circle quickly became a lot of the people that I was playing with, and it was probably added that fitness that I'd not kind of been doing for the last decade. You're going through your 20s. If you're not playing sport, you're living on your own, and your health is lacking.
Not a priority.
It's not a priority, no. And you, so yeah, I loved the that kind of fitness element and the tactical side of the game. I looking back, I was an engineer. I played a lot of chess and those kind of strategy games as well. So I could see the similarities and how that kind of crossed over into the sport as well.
And things actually happened really quickly for you in the world of touch rugby, because after a year, trials for England were looming. Tell us about that.
Yeah,
Wow.
so I think it was probably, big fish in a small pond syndrome at the time. I felt like, I'm quite good in this really small group of people that are playing. Someone said there was England trials. I thought, I'll have a go. Went along, absolutely different sport than what I was expecting. There was like positions, there was set moves, there was tactics, and I was like, we were just playing for fun, and I just felt like I'd kind of got a bit better than a few of the others. And I was very much out of my depth. It's suffice to say I didn't get selected in the first time I went, but I kind of understood what I needed to do. So my core skills were strong enough. It was the knowledge and experience of like game sense that I was kind of lacking. So went back to Manchester. A couple of friends of mine, we set up a touch rugby club, and then started to kind of play the circuit. Again, didn't know the circuit existed when I started to play. Realised that there was an event series, kind of started to play in that. And then I guess kind of just became a student of the game. You look on YouTube and you try and find out who's doing what, did referee courses, coaching courses, and it's just learning as much and consuming as much of the sports as possible to kind of to learn as much as I could. And then after setting up the club, it was probably 2 years of coaching that was I'd go to a training session and the coach would say, you do this, and I'd go, okay, we'll do that. I'd never really understood why, and because I was like, no one's asking why, they're just doing it, so I equally didn't ask.
Yeah.
But when I started to go back to the club and they were asking me, and I was like, I need to up my game here to be able to answer. So that coaching transition made me learn a lot more about it, and only like 2 years down the line, after that club had set up and coached those social players, we had 10 players from our club playing for England in that really, and again, short space of time, but really fast trajectory for us all, really.
It's really nice, isn't it, when you get something. I was about to say later in life again. Again, 30 is not old, people. Just want to
Please
put that
stop
out
that.
there.
30's around the corner for me, so.
It's not. It's very young. But it's nice when you have something you can become obsessed with, a passion that you can throw yourself into. Physically, you can throw it into.
Yeah.
Socially, it's really good. It's really nice when you have that thing that just consumes you.
Absolutely, yeah. And I was an engineer at the time, and I did a lot of travelling around the world at the time, and I was like, actually, I think I'm going to change my job. I was missing too many things that I was like, I'm really invested into this sport, because at the time I was not doing kind of like when you're single in your 20s and you're travelling, like there was nothing to like miss.
Yeah.
Whereas when you started to get into, you've got a priority of like, actually, I'm really enjoying this, and that social side, I changed jobs, so I changed like positions in my current job, so I didn't have to travel as much, and it became much more of a priority just because I was enjoying it so much. And like you say, it kind of gets under your skin a little bit, and it becomes all encompassing a little bit.
Greg, I think before we actually carry on talking about your journey in touch rugby, probably a really important place to go is to actually just take it back, because I'm almost certain that most people listening along will know about rugby union, rugby league, but perhaps not as many people would have been familiar with touch rugby. So if you wouldn't mind kind of just taking us back to the beginning in terms of how it differs from the other disciplines, and, give us a few basics.
Yeah, so I guess as a guide, generally, rugby union 15 aside, rugby league 13 aside, touch is 6 aside. You'll have a team of 12 or 14, but 6 aside on the field. So the game time, 80 minutes in rugby, 40 minutes in touch. Pitch size is smaller, so it's 70 metres long by 50 metres wide. The makeup of the team is different. So in rugby, you would tend to have a men's team, and now there's a lot of women's teams like started up in professional sport as well. But in touch we have that too, but we also have a mixed game as well. So then that tends to be a split of 3 males and 3 females. The rule is a maximum of 3, but that tends to be how kind of the composition of the team is. The scoring's different. So in union you get 5 points for a try, 4 in rugby league. and then you get the chance to convert that with a kick. Whereas in touch, there's no kick in, and it's just 1 point per try. Touches replace tackles, so there's no there's less physical contact. Like, it's not.
You're not getting smashed like you're doing.
No, and it's a minimal contact sport. So, and it also, I guess, with that is the nuance of it's a very honest sport. So that if you're just running past and you touch somebody's hair or clothes, that also counts. So it needs to be an honesty call, and which again, it kind of plays itself to that game.
Which you don't always get in other sports.
No, and I think the sport, to some extent, doesn't work without that. You know, you've got to be honest, and you see people have lost or major championships by going, actually, it looks like I got them, but I missed them. And it's that. And you see that you see clips that have gone viral, like in that community, going, actually, there's a 15-year-old kid that, like, it was a final of a game. It looks like they've got him, and they sort of went, no, I missed, and they've lost the game.
Wow,
and
that's amazing.
You know, and you kind of go in.
Fair play.
That takes a bit of courage to do that when your teammates and you could have lied. Yeah. But and that's, I think, part of the sport is that. So I think the last couple of I think it's similar to rugby league in the fact that there's 6 touches versus 6 tackles, and you run in. There's a lot of similarities in the sport as well. You know, you're running forwards, you're passing backwards, the evasion side of things as well. Passing, catching, all of those kind of core skills. But it's becoming a much more popular game worldwide as well. You know, there's probably 30, 40 countries now playing this at all social levels, national and international levels.
It sounds really accessible. And
I think that's the thing, because even at, like I said, the social level, you can play at any age, but equally on the international stage, you can play at any age. Internationally, there's like an under-15s team up to an over 60s teams.
Which is amazing.
That is amazing. And fills me with hope as well.
The longevity of the sport, and for players. I mean, the difficulty is, in most sports, you'll stop playing, you go into coaching or volunteering or something. You don't always get that in the sport, because everyone wants to still play. It's like, someone needs to coach. Like, someone needs to. Yeah. But I think if you look at the crossover and the top flight rugby countries, Australia's, New Zealand, South Africa's, a lot of those players that have come through, specifically the women, have all come through that touch background. And if you look at even the Rio Olympics and the women's sevens, the Australia team in 2016 had all played in the 2015 World Cup. That whole team virtually shifted and went to get an Olympic medal the following year. Wow. And I said majority, it was not every single person, but all of them had played representative touch for national and big clubs at the World Cup the previous year. And so that crossover of skills is huge as well. So
really interesting. I guess a good basis then if you want to go on to do other stuff. I'm going to ask you about the positions, mid, links and wings. I can't believe I'm about to ask a guest this question, but what's your favourite position?
Middle. I've always played middle. So I think there's 6 players on a field. So as you would expect, the wings are the ones closest to the sidelines. The middles are the 2 people in the middle, and there's only one position left. So the links are kind of the linchpin between those 2. I've always played middle. From kind of when I started out, it's just where I ended up being put, and I guess you hone your skills in that space over time. It's I feel more of a decision-making process. There's a lot of, I guess, a leadership communication piece in there.
So that's where the best players go.
It's not always. I think it's certainly not the best players. I think when you go back to just starting the game, that's where the best players would stand, because they feel more confident making those decisions. Whereas, 10 years on, people specialise in certain positions. Whereas I remember when I kind of started out, what positions do you play? Australia going, we go down to, I play right middle. And I was like, we were just picking the best players. We weren't going, are you the best winger? We were saying, these are the best 16 players and you're selected. Whereas they're going down to the level of which side of the field and what position do you play. And that started to change our mindset of actually you can specialise in these certain, and they're very distinctive skill sets needed. There's a lot of different physicality needed, like endurance between certain positions and all of that when you kind of get to that granular level.
So has that all changed over the? So how long have you been playing? I guess almost 20 years. Like,
yeah.
Has that attention? What am I looking for? Not attention to detail, but that kind of like the microcosm of positions.
Yeah.
Has that all changed over that time?
Absolutely, yeah. And even like from a research point of view, we've started to do a lot of research for PhDs and kind of a lot of that kind of stuff. Wow. Actually, my wife's doing a PhD in touch rugby.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
And that part of that is injuries in the sport. Because you kind of go, oh, it's non-contact, and I use inverted commas in the non-contact because it is contact, it's just minimal. But you still get the injuries of like you roll an ankle or you like, there's still collisions, be that not purposefully. And equally, there's a lot of demands on your body that are different if you're playing wing than you are playing link than you are middle. So they've started to kind of did a lot of work on wearing GPS and tracking player movements and how fast you run, how long you run for, how often you sub, and all of the kind of analysis. So we have gone now in England, we kind of started to, and probably we were one of the first to kind of do that. A lot of other countries, specifically Australia, New Zealand, are at the top of the game because they've been playing a lot longer, had it anecdotally, whereas we started to go, actually, the only way we can get ahead is by analysing the game a lot more. So yeah, we've done a lot of work in that research piece as well. And it makes decision making easier because you go in, this is the kind of person we need in this position.
There's data to back it up.
Yeah, and you know, when you're doing testing of speed and agility and all them other kind of things, you can kind of line it up and going, oh, well, we just think they're better. Like, actually, here's the data to suggest that this is the kind of things that we need out of the players in certain positions.
But then I think that deeper level of analysis is only really possible kind of when the game grows, really. And obviously, in that time, you obviously have seen a massive growth in the game. I mean, it's so popular now, isn't it? And only getting more popular. So we're going to be seeing more and more of these kind of things as time goes on, aren't we?
Yeah. I mean, it was never... When we kind of started playing socially, and even when I was kind of starting to play in the England teams, it was at no point was, did we ever think about, I know what we need to do some more analysis and do in terms of, like, we were looking at the game of how you can, like, manipulate a defence or how can you change your systems or attacking moves, but the physicality and the, I guess, position-specific stuff wasn't even on our radar for a good 5 or 6 years. And then we started to bring in more professionalised systems in. So actually, how can we get those additional advantages that, without just playing it for longer, what can we do to kind of progress? So yeah, that was one of the areas that we kind of looked into.
I'm getting obsessed with touch rugby.
He's in.
He's setting up his own team. He's in now. Yeah.
It sounds like a good time to get involved in the sport. You know, it's growing. As you say, all these things are expanding. It's growing. It sounds like a really good time. If you are someone that's watching, thinks, "Well, that sounds like me," quite a good time to get involved. I said this to you before in a previous episode. I've got a bit of a dream, Greg. It's pretty much my last dream. All my other dreams have died. This is my last dream. I'm 40. I've always wanted to earn an international cap.
Yeah.
And I'm not fussed in what sport. Grew up playing football, nowhere near good enough. In the last couple of years, I've been researching sports I could try and get into. What I settled on was walking football, which I can't play for another 15, 20 years. But touch rugby sounds so accessible. I feel like I'm quite a sporty guy. I could probably go along and pick it up quite quickly. Do you think I've got a chance of earning an England or Ireland cap in touch rugby if I started playing tomorrow?
Sorry, your face, for anyone not watching, the way you sort of thought, how do I tackle this question here? I've got to be polite.
Well, you won't tackle the question, there's no tackling.
Yeah, that is tricky.
Yeah. I would say absolutely, yeah. So like I said, okay. I didn't play the sport until I was 28, and then I started to play for England at 30. Now, I would say back when I started to play, the player pool was less, so it was easier to get in because sometimes you just had to be the right gender and the right age and playing the sport. It's like actually the team's picking itself because there's only 16 people turning up.
Yeah.
Whereas now it's grown exponentially. So the position, like the amount of people vying for those spots has also grown. So you have to kind of be at the top of that game. But we've still got players now, certainly because in the Opens grade, it's like it's very difficult to get in. Like you're coming through, you've got to be starting playing at 12, 15, going through the university setup, series, playing all of those to get into them Open squads because those are very tough, elite kind of athletes. Whereas in the seniors and masters divisions, whereas you'd sit in that masters category, then we've got players that have playing now up into like into the 60s.
Wow.
That have only played for a couple of years and playing for England. And again, it's the player pool is less so at that top end.
Yeah.
It will eventually, all of the people that are coming through a decade later will all be in that and it become more difficult again. But I think it's an accessible game. You can turn up, have fun and start to learn it and do more and more and just get more involved in it. And I'd say it's accessible and if you're already sporty and you've kind of got that, a bit of spatial awareness and stuff, then absolutely.
And that's England. I mean, Ireland, there's probably only 6 people that play.
Careful. Behave yourself. Do you know what, though? I think you said it earlier on in the podcast. You mentioned the word game sense, I think. And perhaps that's something, isn't it? Because, of course, with a lot of sports, the majority of it comes down to, how strong are you? How fast are you? And, of course, that is absolutely an aspect here. But, that awareness, the knowledge, as you were saying when you went to your first England trials that wasn't there for you at that time, is so important. So I guess maybe if you can learn that.
Right. Forget the physical. Actually.
No, that's hey, listen, that can be there
as well.
I think you're right, though, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you can turn up and play in your local league. There'll be one not too far from you anyway.
I've already Googled it.
Yeah, well, there you go. You can go down, have a game, take some friends, enter a league. You can play I guess similar to the five-a-side, you just turn up and you play in a league for a few weeks and then there's some winners and losers, etc. Touch is the same. You can turn up, pay a few quid and play in a local league. Opportunities to kind of do so. Trials are every year and there's previously the trials were you'd all turn up in a field, you'd do some grids and you'd play some games and if you knew who you needed to impress or whatever, it was very much everyone was out for themselves. They wanted to look like the person that knew what they were doing and they didn't want to pass because they wanted to look like they could do it.
Yeah.
We implemented a system whereas it went quite regionalised, so the Northwest, Midlands, Southeast, whatever, they would all have their own regions. They would get the best players together as a team and play against the others. So when you turned up, the trial was you're going as a team now, not as an individual.
Yeah.
It grew the player pool regionally and locally for players, coaches and referees, administrators, volunteers, all of the people that you need to kind of for it to happen, which progressed into that kind of bigger national tournament. So that's the quickest route in is playing in a local league, find a club if there's one nearby. There's a regional setup, which yours will probably be the south. Where are you?
Southeast, sort of, yeah.
So, yeah, either southeast or west or somewhere similar. And then, you go from there. So I would say yes.
Plus,
watch this space.
I already know someone that works at England Touch Rugby, so I've got an in anyway.
Oh, goodness me. He's really hanging on to this dream.
But so you went from not playing to playing for England 2 years later, and I think, Cissy, you won gold in your first England. Firstly, what was that like? I guess winning a gold. But also, I guess that first game for England where you're representing your country and you're putting the top on, and it must have been an amazing journey.
No, it absolutely was. I think when I got the email to say that you'd been selected, I've still got that email saved. Because it was you don't always expect that because I'd gone previously and it went terribly. I was like, I don't know how I've gone. I feel like I'm a lot better than I was and I knew the game a lot more. But the competition was still as strong. But yeah, I was picked for the men's 30s team at the time. We were playing 2009 home nation, so that was against England, Ireland, Scotland, Wales. Jersey Guernsey was the event up in Glasgow. But yeah, I got my first try in that event. I got most valuable player that was selected from the team as well, which sometimes I think when it comes from your teammates as opposed to a coach or someone else, it just it feels
it means
more important, which is great. I think, you know, we had the anthems playing before the final, and you all stood there like shoulder to shoulder. So that kind of, you know, your family is watching. So I think that it's just a proud kind of moment, regardless of what kind of your journey was to get there and what sport you're playing in. It's still that spine-tingling kind of feel.
I want that moment so badly.
Oh, it does sound so special.
Sounds amazing.
But I think because of that, when I started to work at England Touch afterwards, I wanted, because at the time you turned up and you're like, oh, here's your kit, and we're off playing, and I felt like there was something missing in that. I was like, oh, just here's your kit. It felt so. When I started to kind of be more involved in the sport and kind of running that side, I put like a shirt presentation piece in the night before. Like you'd go up on the stage and your coach would hand it out, and it made it a big deal. More so for debutants, but like even like now I've been playing, you know, for the last X amount of years. You still go up and you still get your kit, and you still feel like that. You know what? This is still...
Yeah, that's really nice.
Yeah, so...
That's like you said, that's part of what makes it so special.
Yeah,
You've worked really hard to
Yeah,
get there,
yeah.
and
Exactly,
it's a
yeah.
massive deal. You know,
Yeah, it's a big
representing
deal.
your country,
Yeah.
you want to make the most of
Massively.
that moment.
Yeah.
You know, it's something
so
that I'm sure
cool.
will live with you forever. And,
Definitely.
you know, just looking here, you've won a further 5 gold medals, 2 silvers, and at the 2015 World Cup, you became England captain when you came home with bronze. Some amazing achievements there. But do you have a proudest achievement, one that really stands out in your mind?
I guess, so I played men's 30s for the first couple of years, and then I moved to mixed in 2011 World Cup. And mixed was always my preference. It's what I'd kind of started my club was mixed, and the majority of the sport starts off as mixed because you need kind of less kind of gender mix and players to kind of do so. And I stayed with that mixed team then for 4 European Championships and 3 World Cups. And it was a really kind of close-knit team. It was a really kind of... we had a lot of success in that squad. And a lot of that was because of the friendships and bonds that you end up trusting people, and you get to learn how they play over time. You know, I got to play with people from my club that also represent England in my England team. So I guess all of those connections made all of that kind of a lot more special. But yeah, 2015 bronze medal was certainly a milestone. And I think for those that don't really know touch, if you're going to any major championships at a World Cup level, outside of Australia and New Zealand, bronze is gold. Like we're going to that event thinking if we get bronze, that's our gold, because we know that at that point back in 2011, 2015 and pretty much 2019, those 3 World Cup cycles, we were never aiming for gold. It's like someone goes, oh, you know, don't be so negative. It's like we're being realistic of actually that my first game against Australia back in 2011, it was like 20-0, and I was like, I have no idea what just happened.
When you put it like that, I mean, that's extraordinary, isn't it?
Yeah.
The golf.
You couldn't even... Sometimes you go, oh, I know what I needed to do to fix that. We had no idea how these people were running past us as quick as, like, it was so far beyond us back at that time. So yeah, I think in terms of that 2015 World Cup year, we'd come off 2014 cycle at European Championships with a silver, and we lost against Scotland in the final, and we'd beaten them in the pools. So that was a really tough kind of pill to swallow. And I think because the previous 3 years of the 3 years kind of preceding that, we'd not lost a game. In every international game, every international event, we'd not lost a game. So we weren't used to losing. So when we lost that final, and then the following year you're starting out again, it's like how do we build back from this? Like the confidence was like, what do we do differently? So we did a lot of analysis, and our prep for that World Cup was probably the most that we'd ever done. And not to suggest that we were ever complacent prior to that, but we're like, okay, well, maybe we weren't doing these additional things that we now need to start doing, because when you're at the top of your game, it's everyone's World Cup to play against you, isn't it? Because they up their game to play you. So we were always there ready to kind of be picked off. So our preparation was really good. We knew we didn't have a chance against the Australia-New Zealand teams, but we got to play Australia in the semi-final. Knew we weren't going to lose the game, but we set our goals differently. So it wasn't about winning, it was about completing our sets, it was about not being... it was about, can we score? It was all, like, if you look at, we lost 16-1 against New Zealand in the first World Cup I played in, and it was 6-1 the following. Like, and you still lost 6-1, which is a big scoreline,
but significantly
it's progress, isn't it?
And I think that's where we were starting to go, actually, the things that we're putting in place are kind of making big differences. And the weather at that event, so we lost 2 days worth of play. It was torrential rain. The pitches were just flooded, like the games had stopped. So there's a lot of format was rejigged, and we had to kind of like ad hoc play different teams at different places. It's kind of a difficult kind of mindset to go, oh, are we playing today? Are we not? Yeah. And it was, you kind of gear yourself up weeks in advance going, we play these on this day, we play them on that day, we're going to rest here. So you set your week out of how you're going to do things. And then we played a bronze medal match in the previous World Cup, and we lost in drop-off. So for those that don't know what drop-off is when there's a draw at the end of the game, if you go to, penalty shootout in football, the idea being is that rather than playing 6-a-side, you'll go down to 5-a-side for 2 minutes, and then you go down to 4-a-side for 2 minutes.
It's literally a player drops off.
And then you go down to 3-a-side for 2 minutes.
That's so intense.
And it's just first try is a winner.
Oh, that's kind of brutal.
And it's a bit brutal. The rules have changed nuanced a little bit now, but that's basically what kind of happens. You drop players until there's 3-a-side.
And
like a penalty shootout, do you work out who's going to drop off each time?
Yes. Yeah. And you can still sub, but you're only down to 3 players. But when you play in mix, you've got 2 guys and 1 girl, 3-a-side.
Imagine if football did that.
Yeah.
Start 11, 10,
yeah.
9.
I actually think that's a really cool idea.
Yeah.
Imagine trying to run on a football pitch, 2 players on each side.
Yeah. Just kick it.
Lob the keeper.
Long ball.
No, I love that. It's so
That's
exciting.
amazing.
And again, it's so interesting learning about a sport that really, if I'm honest, I didn't know a huge amount about.
No.
But it sounds so much fun, not just to play actually, but to watch.
Yeah.
That sounds so exciting.
I'm learning a lot about it. So are Australia and New Zealand still the best teams?
Yes, they were. If they entered the competition in this World Cup, they were in every final.
How significant is that golf now? Has it kind of progressed?
It has progressed a hell of a lot. So I was kind of looking for some stats of the day, actually, like where we were up to. So I guess in terms of closing that gap, and in the Opens divisions, it's reduced, but not as much as it has in the seniors and masters categories, because again, we've been playing longer now, so those people have been playing a lot longer. So we lost 11-9 in a men's 30s game against New Zealand. Are the ones that we kind of close into faster, because even though it was Australia and New Zealand in every final, Australia won every final by 1. So there's still a differential between the top 2.
Yeah.
Wow.
There was our women's 40s team beat New Zealand in the pools game, and outside of Australia, no international team has ever beat New Zealand ever.
Wow.
So this was like the first year that category existed, and a phenomenal team that was kind of put together. I've got some good friends in that team as well. So to watch them play and that closed the gap and the elation.
That was amazing.
Unfortunately, when they ended up playing them again later in the semi-final, they lost, so they didn't get to the final. But the significance of that shift in catching. It was like.
Is there a rivalry
between
the English and the Australians, or the? I mean, you can't really have a rivalry in New Zealand. They're too nice.
Australia and New Zealand have got a rivalry because they have like Trans-Tasman games like outside of international competition. And we have like the rivalry between like you would do with Scotland and France and whoever, which I think exists in all sports. Like it's no different in any of the sports. But I think certainly the closing of the gap in some of those is significant. And you know there's been a couple of times where some of our open teams have been, you know, just unlucky that the way that the draws happened or, you know, the final whistle has gone. When you know your teams are like this all the way through, and you're up by one, you're down by one, the final whistle's blown. Like if it was blown a minute before or after, you'd have won. Like we're getting closer in a lot of those.
That's amazing to have. This is why I love. Best thing about sport is like the sort of narrative arcs that come, and we're in the middle of one now with England Touch Rugby, and hopefully that is coming to the point where they can wrestle the title away from Australia. So the most recent World Cup was in England, wasn't it? Last year, 2024. Yeah. Did Australia win that?
Yes, they won 11 of the categories. So yeah, they were still. And don't get me wrong, in the opens categories, a lot of those, the women's Australia's setup is far superior than anyone else's. So the women's game wasn't a massive scoreline, but it was significant enough to go, they comfortably won. The men's and the mixed, there was only a try in it, or maybe one or two. So they're very, very close. And again, it goes tit for tat between each. But yeah, Australia is still.
So next World Cup, 2028.
Yes.
I think it's England's time.
Well, it's in New Zealand, so.
Wow.
How good would it be to do it there?
It's certainly New Zealand's time to kind of, because they will have, because it's payer players, to pick the best team, you also need the people that can afford to go and travel to the other side of the world. So if you're in New Zealand and you have to like take 2-3 weeks off work, fly all the way over, and you've got all of your stuff, you don't always get every single player that you'd want to select because they can't afford to do it or whatever. Whereas on the home ground, they will be stronger.
Their pool's going to be massive.
So
but that said, like we travel well as an England team. We travel, like we tend to get the majority of the players that we want to select can fortunately afford to go. And we've done quite a bit of work on how we can minimise costs and budgets. And like, you know, sponsorship is still a big kind of piece of what you do. And, you know, in the current climate, sponsorship's a tough gig. Like no one's got deep pockets like they used to. Go, put my name on your shirt and here's a few £1,000. Like it doesn't happen like that anymore. But yeah, I think 2028 we've still got, you know, big ambitions to kind of push on again in that space.
And I'll be representing England obviously by then.
Well, you'll be there. You'll be there to see it.
So, yeah.
You'll be there to see it.
I'm saying nothing. I'm saying nothing.
Can't even get support of Kenzie.
Let's keep believing. Looking ahead to the future then, you've won 97 caps for England, which, amazing. By the way, is incredible. So that milestone of 100 is so close.
Yeah.
Is
that the goal? You want to break that big number?
Well, funnily enough, like at home, I've got my first England shirt like framed on my wall, and underneath it, after I'd played a number of years and played at a World Cup and etc., there's a little plaque that says 2019 played this, and then at 2015 when I played in the World Cup and we got a bronze, my wife was like, "Oh well, we'll get that because you've got to this," and then like, you know, that's it now, isn't it? You've done it.
Really? She thought that was like,
well, yeah,
your
and
time.
I don't know why she thought that, because at no point did I ever intimate this. But
that was her way of saying we're done.
Yeah, that was like, yeah.
It wasn't a question.
No.
You missed the cue on that.
I did, yeah. But what did you say? Yeah. So that still sits behind me, and I've not updated that plaque because I played 2 World Cups since that was made. But yeah, I mean, we had 2 Test matches against Wales last year. They weren't capped. I don't know what happened in that respect. And then our World Cup didn't go according to plan. So I would have thought if I got those capped in the summer and we'd have got to the bronze medal match, that would have been my 100th game.
Wow.
It didn't work out. So now I've got to go again now. You can't stop. You're so close.
You can't stop on 97.
Exactly.
No.
Like it's just your OC doesn't allow that either. So
no.
like, And there's no international games this year.
Oh, really?
No, so there's an international events, but they're not capped.
Right.
So the next opportunity will be European Championships in France next year. So that's when I'll tip over 200.
Oh, yeah. What a moment that will be, by the way. I mean,
it's been a long time coming, and there's like a handful of people that have kind of have done that now as well. So
that'll be another plaque, won't it?
Yes, yeah, and I think that's when she'll be like,
she'll try and say again.
This is definitely it. No, I like. Or at that New Zealand trip, you've always wanted to go.
Exactly, New Zealand's lovely.
But joking aside, like we've said, that's the beauty of touch rugby, right?
Yeah,
because there is that option should you wish to persevere
to
of the longevity.
Exactly.
And I love that because, as you say, there's so much that it's promoting healthy lifestyle. You've got your friendships, it's so positive in so many ways. But I can't think of many sports that aren't inhibiting in terms of age and that kind of thing. So to me, that is such a lovely part of the sport because as we keep saying, it is just so inclusive.
Yeah.
It's really something for everyone. And, there's that beauty of, for anyone watching and listening, whatever age, gender, start now. It's not too late, it's...
I think that's a nice message as well, because I think it's really easy with sport, if you're someone that wasn't sporty, or maybe you were and you stopped playing for a bit, to think, I can't. Too old to get back into whatever. I think it's nice that you can pick up a ball and run, as you were saying before. It's jumpers for goalposts, really.
And that's I think part of the beauty of the sport, the jumpers for goal. Like, you basically just need a space, a ball, and a few mates, and you can play. The game is 6-a-side, but you don't need 6-a-side. You can play 4-a-side, 3-a-side. Like, even in the game, you go down. So if you wanted to practice that, you only need 6 of you. It doesn't take a lot to just go, well, there's 3 of us, just bring your mate and we'll all we'll have a game and you can play. Because you wouldn't tend to kind of train that specifically, but you should, because that's the winning and losing at a World Cup final. If you'd not trained for it, then
those are the margins.
So they absolutely are. So I think there's certain playing those kind of small-sided games and fun opportunities to do so.
100 caps aside, what are your aspirations and future ambitions in touch rugby?
I think because I'm just a generally competitive person, you still love winning. So I don't think that'll kind of ever disappear as long as my kind of body allows me to kind of continue to do so. But I think my goals have changed somewhat. A lot of it now is much about enjoying it, having fun. I won't go to a tournament in a team that I just thought, actually, I'm going because I want, I'd rather just go with friends and we do quite a lot of tours across Europe in the summers, like there's an event in France or Germany or Spain or wherever. So I think that having fun and just with your friends on tour is kind of a bigger kind of piece for me nowadays.
Do you know what would be amazing? If it gets to the level where you couldn't play it on a Xbox, like FIFA.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be amazing? Like touch rugby on PlayStation
Maybe
or Xbox.
that's how you get your international cap. Should we just
there you go,
call it there?
Yeah.
Maybe
I just edit myself in.
The esport version
I've already done
there we go.
Yeah.
Esports. That's easy as well, by the way.
I know,
We're
that's
kind of-
actually insanely competitive as
It
well.
really is. That is the
But
whole
this has
new
not been
world.
invented yet, so if you invented it, you can...
Then I'll be... Yeah, there we
The
go.
higher pool is Jim
Yeah.
Daly. So
exactly.
you've got to get an international cap.
Somehow, even then I won't get the cap.
How did I not get picked?
I've been dropped by myself.
Greg, you're obviously coaching touch rugby in Manchester now.
Yeah.
So is it a goal, I suppose, for you to kind of discover that next generation of touch rugby players?
Probably not so much now. I've coached probably, like I said, for the last probably 15 years, and a lot of players that I've coached that when we had a youth section and did a lot of that work have gone on to play under 18s, opens, international caps. And my club at the beginning had a lot of seniors and masters, and then we went to we need more younger players coming through. Found those from either rugby clubs or whatever, or girls that were playing netball or athletics, and they were just good sports people that have kind of really coachable And sometimes I think if you've not played rugby, there's two sides to it. One, if you have played, you know how to pass a ball and find space. But you're very much, I run at that space in my game, whereas this is very different. So it's like, is it easier to teach someone what to do as opposed to teach them what not to do that they've been doing for years?
Exactly.
So there was a few, there's a lot of youngsters that kind of came through. I kind of coached and they're on that kind of pathway and still playing. But I think now the team that I coach are kind of late 20s, early 30s, come into sports probably late. There's a few that playing in like regional teams. Is there a couple that could push on into representing England or, any of them kind of countries? Possibly. But I think, as I was saying, if you're under 30, your only option is to play in the Opens division.
Yeah.
So if you're 29, you're competing against a 20-year-old.
Yeah.
That gap is huge in physicality, speed, agility, all them other kind of things. So chances of that very, very slim nowadays. When you start to get into more older categories, then you've got more opportunity to do so. Again, player pool, numbers, etc. I think my main kind of goal with coaching the team that I do is just making it just more fun and just people enjoying it. It's kind of more people playing in an inclusive kind of space. So the team Village Spartans that I coach is an LGBT team, and I guess that is much more prevalent in that kind of, it's creating that safe space, everyone kind of having fun. And we have like 60 players in the summer kind of turn up to a training session, which is tough to kind of like go, what do I do with 60 and like give people all of the, like we've got quite a few senior players now that we can kind of delineate some of those tasks. But I think that main aim for me now is growing the game, people enjoying it. I think we were just saying off air earlier is that we went to Amsterdam last year as a team and played in the Pride in Touch event. Took the team there, great weekend, camaraderie with all, and then even the people that put the name down to play that weren't selected still came on tour. So there was like there was a team of 14 that were playing, but probably 30 odd people went.
Wow.
Like supporting, I mean, there was the social side and the stuff in the evenings, but they all came to the tournament, watched, and supported everything. So that kind of side of things now is probably just in a coaching aspect is what I would like. That's my goal and aspiration, I guess, in that space.
That also taps into the inclusivity of the sport, which again, you don't often get in other sports. So I think that actually helps with the accessibility. You were talking earlier about the Australian women's team, a lot of them coming from the Olympic team, a lot of them coming from touch. Do you think there's a world in which touch becomes an Olympic event, a Commonwealth event?
It's certainly an aspiration. It's got that, as you've just said then, that inclusive appeal. And if you look at the Paris Olympics and the gender parity between men's, women's and mixed options, it certainly fits the narrative that we're looking to kind of to get. Like you have, mixed triathlon and you've got like mixed teams, whereas previously it was just like it was a men's triathlon and you all just race, whereas now it's like there's relay stuff and it's like how do we start to put that together? So from the mixed version of the game, that ticks all of them boxes. But I think the sport generally doesn't fit the criteria yet. There's a lot of to make it Olympic worthy. You need like all of the anti-doping stuff, the global reach of the stats around. You need 75 countries on 4 nations in the men's team and 40 countries across 3 nations for the women's team. We aren't there yet, but again, not a million miles away. But there is set criteria that kind of needs to be done. But it's from that gender point of view, the well-established rules, the mixed grades, all of that is there. But from a federation like top level, there still needs to be quite a lot of development that's done globally and internationally. I think a lot of the sport is purely down to individuals and countries pushing it forward, not specifically from the top down. I'd say that it's the opposite way around. There's no clear strategy or plans globally. So I think the World Games is probably the one that I would look to aim for, which is like a multi-sport event for a program that's not Olympic sports, which is a kind of an easier route to start that kind of journey. But I think the numbers, and there would certainly be an appetite from the community to get there. But yeah, there's quite a bit to go. But yeah, aspirationally, absolutely.
Amazing,
I'd love to see that.
Well, speaking of aspirations, you of course own a business that creates touch rugby events. So where do you hope to see that go in the future?
Yeah, I mean, I guess a bit of context around that. So On the 7 Events was born in 2020 out of a passion for like high quality events that was much more inclusive for demographics of, I was looking to do seniors and masters events and youth events, not specifically, there's everywhere you go, there's people playing open grades, mixed men's and women's. But if you, like for example, if you wanted to start playing the sport and go and play, you're not going to walk into the first team at your local club. Mm-hmm. So it's like, well, where do I go at 40 then? Where do I play? Where do all of the people at this age go to play? You can play socially, but when you come to like, well, I want to do a bit more and progress and play tournaments, there was nothing that really existed, albeit we knew on the international stage that was growing exponentially, and there was probably more Masters teams than there were Opens teams in the 2019 World Cup. So like, the appetite's there, but there's no outlet for these people outside of major international events. So it's like, you need that stepping stone of like competition and pathway and stuff. So that was, I guess, the key driver to kind of tailor those demographics. And it was more around memorable experiences and not just on the field. It was like, how do we create a turnkey package that you can go, click this button, and there's very little red tape and minimal fuss and accessibility. Like, you know, if you've ever been part of any sports team, to get 16 people from one place to another with all of the right time, right kit, right everything, pay on time, it's a nightmare. So we were like, how can we get people to click a button and we do all of that for them? All they need to do is pay the money. We'll organise hotels, transport.
They just turn up.
All they're doing is they just need to turn up at the right time. And it was like, that is the dream. Like, knowing that I've had to take 16 people around the world to do stuff, and when we've been to international events, I've took 300 people. It's like, I know how difficult this is. If I could click a button and someone's doing it for me, then that's what I want to do. So, and it sat outside of the high performance setup. It ran alongside that. It was supported that, and it connected the two together, but it was very kind of separate. So the first event we put on was in Spain post-COVID, and it was actually postponed due to COVID, even though we'd set dates and it was still lingering. It was like, oh, we're going to open back up, and then we couldn't fly, and then we could. So created the brand and everything is On the 7 Events, and then the one-off event was called Touch and Tapas in Spain. Kind of.
I love that.
So, and again, we were trying to set that like, it was fun vibe, really, really. Like,
touch rugby is becoming more and more appealing.
Yeah.
You didn't bring up the tapas until now.
You should have led with the tapas.
I should have, yeah. But I mean, it was a new brand, it was a new venture, it was a new venue that we'd never used, it was an unknown kind of quantity. So people were obviously skeptical of paying a load of money to go and do this. But I was, I guess from a reputation point of view, they knew I would personally put on big events that were successful. So I was like, it's the same, it's just me doing it now as opposed to like me as an organizer of a governing body kind of stuff. So again, it was simplified all of that process. We started the first year with just 10 teams that were seniors and masters teams. And then the following year we had 22 teams, like 100 and something % like increase. We had teams from 14 different countries attend. We had teams from Malaysia come across, and everyone kind of got behind like they understood what it was then, because we had Instagram reels, we had photography, we had like word of mouth that then it's a lot easier to like sell the second year, isn't it? And it exponentially kind of grown in that respect. And we spoke to the following year, spoke to local councils, and they backed it because again, the economic impact of going to Spain in the off season, you're going in March, so it's not holiday season, so the hotels aren't busy. It's like, well, how can we bring 150,000 euros to your local community? I'm going to bring 350 people here, all eating, drinking, going out, all of the other kind of periphery economic impact that we can bring. So they then started to support the events that we were doing. We're back this year. We've got 26 teams coming out in March, end of March this year. So if you want to,
could be my first introduction.
Exactly. Yeah.
Hang on a minute, Greg. I'm in now. I know how.
I'm not bothered about the touch, but I've heard about the touch.
There we go.
But yeah, I mean, we've kind of got our own merchandise branding stuff this year as well. So like everything that we're kind of doing is just like building each year upon, and like we're looking to do a big club event because we're trying to do it outside of the season. So if you're in the UK, you pretty much you don't want to be playing outside sport in March and November because it's too muddy and the game doesn't really work like that.
Yeah,
it's fast flowing summer sport. So we go to Spain or Portugal or something like other ends of like before the season or after the season, there's still an appetite for people to go because they still want to play and get involved. So yeah, it's going really well.
Amazing work, great creating opportunities for people to grow the game and grow themselves in the game, which is brilliant. We're going to take a quick break. There'll be no drop off. All three of us will come back after the break and we'll chat more with Greg then. This episode is powered by Shoshin.
Shoshin are here for the up-and-comers, the never-giver-uppers, the risers and the fallers, fueling the journey of all athletes with quality products.
For every kick, hit, pass, Shoshin are there. Sharing your passion for nurturing athletes. Together, we can empower the next generation of athletes, one game at a time.
Ready to play. Set to improve. Shoshin.
To find out more information on Shoshin and where to purchase their amazing products, visit www.shoshin-sports.com. Today's episode of Beyond the Sport is brought to you by On the 7 Events. Greg, so good to have you with us today. We're going to go back to your childhood now, and we'd love to hear about, I suppose, what school was like for you and how you found PE during your school days.
I mean, I loved school. Like, I'd never took a day off ever. Like, even when I was poor, I was like, I want to go into school because it's just, you're seeing your friends every single day and you're having fun with them. So from that side of things, like I loved maths, I loved certain kind of subjects within school. I did quite a lot of sport in my younger days. I played a lot of squash, I did a lot of running, and then I played chess and I played rugby league. Both of those kind of progressed quite well, played national, county kind of level at them. And then I guess I kind of just fell out of those habits over time. I think at senior school I kind of hated PE and kind of, you do cross country in the winter, top of a windy hill, and I was like always last. Missed the beginning of the next class because you were still like running around the laps and stuff. So, I was quite, overweight and unfit at that kind of senior school level as well. So, looking back now, it's very much like a different kind of person that I was back in that time. But yeah, from a sporting point of view, I started playing rugby league back then. My cousin played at quite a good level, and I was like, oh, it was quite kind of fun, and kind of just fell into that really. That was my kind of go-to.
I just thought of a new sport actually while we're talking. You know how you can get boxing chess as sport now?
Yeah, I've seen that, yeah.
What if we did rugby chess?
Yeah.
Where we did, 6 moves, touch, to get to the final line, to get to the try, and then play a bit of chess on the side.
Love it. I'm in.
Yeah, I mean, you'd be the best player in the world.
I can brand it. I can brand that. I can sell that. I can
On
market
7
that.
Events.
I can market that.
As long as I'm picked, then that's fine.
I'm going to stick with the touch and tapas if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Touch, chess, and tapas.
Okay, fine.
Okay. Is there a teacher from your time at school that sticks out for you?
I had a teacher back in the day called Mr Rugby, and it was funny actually. He was I'd not thought about him for decades, because when you leave school, you lose touch with that kind of stuff. And it was only January this year he got recognised with an award for the British Empire Medal.
Wow.
Which I'd not thought about him, and when his name kind of popped up on Facebook and people kind of spoke about it, I was like, I'm sure that's my old teacher. Funnily enough, he was the chess teacher and the rugby coach.
There you go.
And I was like, oh, so he could be the face of it.
You're creating a team.
Yeah.
Mr. Rugby.
But yeah, so he was probably the one that I would say that kind of stands out most, just because he kind of set up the clubs and he was kind of the driving force behind it. And a lot of people that went on to play rugby in the kind of Oldham community all knew him. He had lots of different kind of different caps in different kind of arenas. But yeah, he was probably the one.
And did you have a sporting idol when you were growing up?
I wouldn't say I probably had one. Like I went to watch Oldham Rugby League every week in, week out through come rain or high water kind of weathers. But it was that either where Oldham were doing really well from a rugby league point of view, and Oldham Athletic, the football club, were doing really well. And I remember in the newspaper, there was one weekend where the Saturday Oldham Athletic were at Wembley, and on the Sunday Oldham Rugby League were at Wembley. So they were basically saying the whole time was empty, like it was just everyone got a bus and they just went to London, like it was just an empty carcass of a shell. But it was that kind of team, like the rugby league team, then like the Mick Ford, John Cogger kind of era, were probably my sporting kind of idols back in the day. But I guess they change over your time, and I think I look now at probably like Kevin Sinfield and those kind of people that are doing much more outside of sport. So, funnily enough, Kevin doesn't live too far from where I do, and he played at the same rugby league club as I did as well. A few years younger, way better. But like you see that the stuff that he does in the charity space for MND community and the Rob Burrows kind of marathon that is set up. So I think people like that have got that longevity of outside of just the sporting world. I think using, I guess, force for good, isn't it, of what sport is.
Good answer.
I'm a Crystal Palace fan, and actually the word Oldham brings us PTSD, because in the first, it's literally a banned word in Crystal Palace circles.
Oh, really?
In the first Premier League season, 92-93, Palace were basically safe with 3 games to go. Well, we had 1 game left and Oldham had 3 games left, and Palace literally did a lap of honour around the pitch, clapping the fans, being like, yeah, we've stayed up. And Oldham had 3 games, and one was against Villa, who I think were like second, Liverpool and someone else, and they had to win all 3 games to stay up, and even then it would be by goal difference. And we were like, it's not going to happen. And they won every game.
Oh, no.
And we went down on goal difference, starting a tumultuous decade for the club, which ended us going into administration. And so literally the word Oldham is banned in Palace circles. Anyway, I digress. Going back to Mr. Rugby, because when you were talking about him, I was thinking it takes people like that who are committed to creating opportunities for people to go into sports. And I think in a way you've become the Mr. Rugby of touch rugby. There you go, get my words the wrong way around. You are creating those opportunities, you are driving that sport forward. As someone that's played the game, still plays it, and is now heavily involved in England touch and British mountaineering, so you're on the other side as well. What lessons have you learnt from playing the game that you've been able to take into the other side of it? Has it helped you with any challenges that you've found in running the games?
Yeah, absolutely. I think even when I went from playing to coaching to refereeing to volunteering and setting up a club and doing all of that, I think you see all aspects of the sport, and like you said, kind of like that behind the curtain stuff. And I think as a player, like, oh, why are they not doing? Why are they? There's always like, why are they? Is it like there's another group of people that are organising the things? Why are they not doing this? And it's like, well, I'll just do it then. Yeah. I'll be that person. And I go, oh, actually, I see why it can't be done, or then you start to realise why it's done in certain manners. I think sometimes it's just trying to be as transparent as you can with the community of people that you're involved in to say, oh, the reason that it's costs this, or it's at that venue, or it's at this certain kind of thing is, these are the reasons. We're looking to challenge them and we're looking to change them. And if you can help, get involved and help us. Like, when I kind of started to do all of the England touch stuff, at no point was ever short of ideas of, I wonder what we should do next. That was never the problem. It was like money and resource to do it. Yeah. So I said, oh, you know what we should do? Like, that sounds like a great idea. If you want to do that, you do that. You've got all of the authority in the world to just go and do it. Oh, I don't mean me. And I was like, who did you mean then? Because, like, there's very few of us here that can do those things. So there's, I think that the pushback there was always, get involved and be part of the change that you want to see. Because a lot of people tend to like just assume that other people are going to take the mantle and do it.
But I think the sport, sorry, Kenzie,
No,
but I think the sport will at this stage, need people to get involved, need those people. But I'm sure that community that plays respect and appreciate the fact that you play and have played. And so you're seeing it. There's a lot of other sports where people that are at the top running it aren't often people that have played the sport. But I think the fact that you have probably gives the respect in their eyes, and they understand that you're thinking like a player as well as someone that's running it.
Absolutely, and I certainly see that more in the refereeing side as well. So I've refereed and gone up kind of the badge levels and kind of got like kind of that top end of refereeing at international events, etc., as well as playing. So you kind of have the respect of a player, and because you've played the game, some referees have come into the sport from either refereeing different sports or not always playing the game. So the nuances of the sport sometimes, like, you need to have played it to understand what you're ruling. So the rule book says one thing, but you've got to interpret it in a way of, because you can't, like, the rules are sometimes vague or there's a grey area. So being able to have played and go, oh, this is what it actually means on the pitch. Yeah. I think makes a big difference. And from that kind of rapport with players, I've played with and against a lot of the players that I'm reffing, and there's in the sport, like, there's 50-50 calls that can go each way, and I'm very much of like, I want to still be your friend at the end of this game, and I'd be like, it was close, mate, but you'll probably get the next one, and I'm like, you can't argue back at that. It's
no,
like,
exactly.
They've agreed, like, it was close,
yeah,
and the next time it's very close, it'll probably go my way, and I'm like, you've diffused the situation as quick as you can, rather than going, that's the rules and this. Yeah. So
I think a lot of other sports could learn from that.
And I think because I'd played it and, at a good level, and I'd refereed it at a good level, you kind of get that, not just the respect of it, but I guess because you've seen both sides and you've got an affinity with the players. Unfortunate that one, but like, you've got to just have a bit of empathy as well, as opposed to like,
Definitely.
I'm the person with the whistle and making the decisions.
Totally.
Definitely.
So.
But even away from the, having played the game, like when you spoke about the shirt presentations, those experiences, you are bettering future generations because you know what it feels like to be in those scenarios.
And I felt like it was missing the presentation piece. And I didn't know that it was missing at the time, but I was like, I felt like I just got a kit, like I'd ordered it from the shop and it's just arrived, and I felt like those. I didn't want it to like be a lot of pomp and ceremony, but it wanted to be something a bit more
do it justice.
Official. Yeah, and I think those kind of things. You look at, there's a lot of politics in sport, like, and sometimes it's at the detriment of the sport, and it doesn't really kind of do itself justice. But I think if you can be on both sides of that and be as open as you can be with the people being part of it. Like, I've worked at a number of sporting governing bodies, from squash, weightlifting, climbing. So I've seen a lot of similarities across the teams. Like, there's always going to be someone didn't get picked in this team, so their parents not happy about this thing, and then they send in an email, and then it's just like it generates just like a time, like, it just kills your time of being able to actually progress the sport, because all you're dealing with is a complaint because little Billy didn't get picked in the team, and that's, But you get that all the time across all of these different things. So
now we've waxed lyrical about how wonderful it is that touch rugby is so inclusive. That's such an amazing part of the sport. And actually at Davies Sport, the philosophy is play, learn, compete. So that really aligns with touch rugby.
Definitely.
So ultimately, I guess, how can we get more schools, more clubs, more communities to play the sport?
I think this is happening more and more, probably quite organically already. And a lot has been done by commercial entities and not specifically by the national governing body. But again, because touch is still quite new in that space, people have been like, it's always just been free because you just like turn up and you can play. Like, why is it becoming more expensive? It's like, it's becoming more professional, and you need certain things putting in place that then costs more money. If you want it to everyone have to the same kit, all the referees at the same level, all educated better, all got safeguarding things in place, you need to kind of put certain things in place. So you need external companies that kind of like come and help with some of that stuff. And it's taken a while, I guess, for people to understand that you can make money out of these sports, and people are not there purely to make money, but you've got to make money to reinvest the money, and to take it to that next level. So there's quite a few companies out there that are, there's Tri Sports that have just kind of launched last year and this year that are doing a big national program with youth. They're going around doing coaching sessions at lots of different clubs and schools and community kind of festival stuff. Super Touch schools have got a thing in the Midlands doing something very similar. But you still need clubs as an exit route, so it's great to turn up at a school to go, I really enjoyed that for this 4, 6, 8 week block. Where do I go now? Or we'll do it again next year and for another 4, 6 week, 8 block. It's like you need, and again, it's volunteers, it's people, it's a community to kind of build that. Either an exit route as a club or an exit route as a league or as another opportunity outside of that school, as it can be a community group, it can be whatever, to kind of and the governing body is there to not specifically fund but support with resources. This is how you do it, this is a blueprint of what you need to do, and the minimal kind of standards that we would want any kind of sporting kind of organisation to set up. But I think in the last few years, the numbers of people playing, anecdotally, has risen dramatically. That doesn't always translate into national governing body membership numbers rising, because you don't need to be a member to go and play. You only need to be a member when you play at a certain level. Whereas, if you look at England Athletics, for example, they'll have 100,000 members, but there's 7 million people running. Yeah. It doesn't translate specifically. But I think in terms of touch, people are now going, actually, well, should I just be a member because it's the right thing to do? And I think when I look at it from a British Mountaineering Council point of view, the only people that need to be a member are the people that are competing in the climbing competitions, which is 1% of the membership. There's 80,000 odd members. The others are intrinsically want to get some insurance and feel like we're giving back to an organisation that's doing good stuff. They're doing a lot of access and conservation work and other side of things. So I think from that point of view, it's how do you make a membership proposition valuable as well, so people want to be a member, not just have to be.
Yeah, it's an interesting sort of thing to tackle. As a sort of educator in the game, what would your message be to PE teachers to try and sort of empower them to put forward a positive sort of view of the sport, or maybe if they're thinking about introducing it at school or finding a way into it?
From a PE teacher point of view, I'd say that they've got one of the most powerful jobs in education. They're not just teaching sport, but it's that they're shaping lifelong connections to health, well-being, sport, movement, teamwork, resilience, all of them other kind of things that come along with sport, not just can kick a football in a certain way or throw a ball in a certain kind of manner. But I think from a health point of view, it's super important. They need to just have that energy and innovation and making it basically just fun for people to kind of keep involved or get involved with sport and then keep involved with sport. You know, it's not, you know, I've got a lot of friends that are teachers, and they need to kind of like celebrate effort and not just winning.
Definitely.
And I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm not of that, like everyone should get a medal for every single thing that they turn up to, but it's not just the people that win. It's like the goal for different people is like, well, did I just jump over all of the hurdles and did I finish the race? Like, yeah, I didn't win, but that was my goal in that one thing. So you tried your hardest. You just didn't give up halfway around the race or whatever. So I certainly think that, you know, the healthy habits and you know, that inclusivity of sport and just making it that every student looks forward to doing PE. And I think that's the thing that I would kind of say to PE teachers.
I think that's really important because not everyone can win, but everyone can try.
Yeah.
And if you tried sometimes, you didn't win, but you achieved something you couldn't do before in the session, that feels like a victory. That feels like a win.
Yeah,
I think that's so important to put forward. With our daughter, we try and encourage, like, you tried really hard, well done. You were brave, you tried today. You know, she doesn't always win stuff, but we're like, you tried really hard, well done. And hopefully, whatever she goes into, sports or whatever, you can sort of take that forward in life. I think that's connecting that with enjoyment and trying and bettering yourself is so important, especially at a young age.
And my daughter does the same. Like she does all of the sports and clubs. She goes to gymnastics, she does park run at a weekend, she'll go to netball, she'll go to dance class. And like, as long as you're enjoying all of these things, I'll keep taking you. Like, you feel like taxi of dad, and like,
definitely.
That's like your
That's
life.
a whole new
That's
job.
your life now. But like, I want her to go and like, I'm not bothered about her specialising in any of the things as long as she's just enjoying all of the things. I think, like, as we were just saying then, it's like you go back to when we play Australia and New Zealand. Our aim is not to win that game. We'd love to win, but we don't go into it thinking we're going to win this game. We go, did we do these things well? Did we put our game plan that we've been training for on the field? Did we do well enough? Did we stop this? Did we do the other thing? So the goal in some of them instances, it wasn't to win. It was to do certain things well. And like, we'll come off and go, you know what? We did well then. We've lost 5-0, but we've gone, we did ourselves justice in that game. So it's, you know, it's setting them different goals, isn't it? And being, you know, clear with them.
Yeah.
Now, Greg, before we say goodbye, a question we ask everybody that comes on the Beyond the Sport podcast is if they could go back and speak to their 10-year-old self, knowing everything you know now, having experienced everything you have, what would you say?
I think my 10-year-old self was a very kind of different person. So like, my journey in sport has been very diverse in terms of very sporty, then took a big chunk of time off, and then now sporty again. But I'd say just keep going. I think all of those things that you've done in your like the challenges you faced throughout it, just like it shapes who you are as an individual. And I think certainly from a, you know, resilience point of view, I think I'd be saying to them, like, you can achieve what you like. You just need to put your mind to it, keep going, and don't like fail at the first hurdle. And I guess it's those setting those specific goals. Like, it's not about winning, it's about enjoying, it's being healthy, it's about habits, it's about team building. It's all about them other kind of peripheral things that sport generally brings to you. That I think is, you know, you got to believe in yourself and just keep working hard and having fun with it.
I think that's a beautiful message.
I love that.
Greg, it's been a pleasure having you on the podcast. Thanks so much for sharing your story and joining us today.
Thank you very much.
Greg, thank you.
If you want to find out more about On The 7 events and Touch Rugby, go to onthe7events.com. Thank you so much for joining us today. It's been great having Greg on, and we hope you'll join us again very soon on the Beyond the Sport podcast.